The GoldFish Report Number 53, Exopolitics Roundtable Part 2. May 27, 2016. With host, the ambassador of the Red Dragon family and panel, Cobra, Randy Cramer, and Rob Potter, and the GoldFish Report team, producer and co-hosts Louisa and Steve. Louisa, hi everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I am Louisa, your co-host, and this is a very special edition today. This is our Exopolitics Roundtable Part 2. We have a very special group of guests with us today. We have with us, Rob Potter. Rob, how are you doing today? I want to say thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here with the gang and we'll look forward to some interesting revelations today, indeed, thanks. And we also have Cobra joining us today as well. Thanks for joining us, Cobra. Cobra, yes, hello to everybody. It will be a very exciting interview. We have Randy Cramer joining us today. Hi Randy. Randy, hello. And we also have our GoldFish Report team member Steve. Steve, I can't wait. And of course, we have our gracious host, the ambassador from the Red Dragon family. Welcome Ambassador. Ambassador, thank you very much and welcome everyone to the program. Louisa, today's focus is going to be on how humanity can adjust to the reality of disclosure and how our reality needs to change in order to accommodate disclosure and what it means. And I am going to play for a moment 1 minute of video to set the tone here. But what's important about this is that this is part of our psychological process of assimilating disclosure into our life. This is JFK's 1961 speech about secret societies. Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. Louisa, this speech was obviously, I think many can agree, was in part the reason Kennedy was assassinated. But that was the beginning of official disclosure back in 1961 and it's been like water droplets of official information ever since. We also have President Eisenhower's warning to the American people about the military-industrial complex in his 1961 speech, and to a large extent that speech was ignored and as was Kennedy's speech. More recently we have John Podesta, former White House advisor, upon leaving his position said, "Finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again not securing the disclosure of the UFO files." We had Hillary Clinton recently saying in her campaign for the White House that if she was elected she would tell the truth about UFOs. We have the Pope coming out, now on an official level this is what we have had so far, and saying that he would baptize aliens. We have UNICEF, which is a United Nations program, who has come out with Tolerance for Extraterrestrial Life public service campaign showing an extraterrestrial boy, mostly human-looking but not human. You can definitely see that. Again, the Pope saying he is willing to baptize aliens if they came to the Vatican. And then of course, we have more recently, we have the United Nations that opened the Office of Outer Space Affairs, and of course, there is SpaceX which has just announced its new Red Dragon rocket that will be launched in 2018 to begin colonizing Mars. So if people start connecting the dots we are having some disclosure to some extent. And finally, there is a new law now in the United States, which I wrote about in a research paper on Bill H.R. 1508 which was part of a larger bill, H.R. 2262, which become a law regarding Space Resource Exploration and Utilization Act of 2015 inches, which includes rights to mining asteroids, and it also has to do with the slave labor colonies on Mars. And I think with that, We have a good place to start, because little by little all this is accumulating and the evidence is before us, and of course, there is a much bigger disclosure program that is on its way that our guests may or may not want to discuss. It is up to the guests if they want to discuss it. Randy, can I actually add 2 more to that list that I think are pretty significant and important? Louisa, sure Randy, go ahead. So, last year, officially, on a Friday, as far as we know Mars had no breathable atmosphere, no running water and no potential for life whatsoever. On a Monday following that all of a sudden it's got running water and we have an official admission from NASA administration saying that we may have to acknowledge that there may be livable atmosphere on Mars, right now. And then, in case you missed it, 2 weeks ago they came up with the mass spectrometer that said, oh look, we've actually found oxygen in the atmosphere. So that is a pretty important set of transitions where we've gone from nope, no way could there be life on it, to now we've got a total open door. Oh, we've looked through these satellite pictures and we found the ones with trees on it. How about that? Any number of things could happen in terms of what could happen as far as what next we learn in that cycle of turning with Mars. The other thing that I think that is super important is that we started with a process of learning all kinds of secretive things that the intelligence agencies were doing with the Snowden papers. In case you also haven't heard, 2 days ago Glenn Greenwald and his associate decided that over the next few weeks they are going to release the rest of the Snowden papers. We expect there to be a disclosure bomb in there somewhere. So these are 2 things that we think that are absolutely indicative of the turning of the volume knob on the, oh look we are starting on this, and then over a period of months look where we are now, and that's what's going to continue to happen. We are going to continue to every few weeks and months continue to go, oh, look where we are now ... and then oh, look where we are now, and then before you know it we are going to be in a whole other place, and it's going to be quite an entertaining trip, to be honest. Louisa, it's like an incremental process, is that right Cobra, and is that how you see the disclosure process unfolding? Cobra, it's a gradual process, but this gradual process will increase, it will accelerate until the final breakthrough. And there are various factions, various interest groups that want to guide this process in their own way, but ultimately only full disclosure with all suppressed intel will be released to the mass population. Steve, who is releasing this at the moment, do you know Cobra? Cobra, there are many forces releasing it. Number 1, the cabal itself is releasing part of it because they want to spin it in their own direction. They want to spin it in a way that will appear as innocent onlookers on the process, that they were never involved in the process and that they were not signing any treaties with strange races in the past. This is their spin. Again, there are the light forces like the Eastern Alliance that would like to release more to prepare people to ease the shock, and of course there are the secret space programs, there are the Agartha network factions that want to release their own intel, and there are of course the positive extraterrestrial races that would like to create conditions for contact as soon as possible. Steve, are the extraterrestrial races, do they have permission or are they allowed to interfere in the disclosure program? Cobra, if you allow them, of course they have permission, and there are individuals on the surface of the planet that gave this permission to receive that intel, and then those people on the surface of the planet who gave that permission can release that intel through alternative media or even through mainstream media. Louisa, well, what about the Council of 12? Let's talk about the Council of 12. Rob, there are many different Councils of 12. Dr. Frank Strange's was a member of a Venusian contingent that had 6 extraterrestrials and 6 humans on board, and they met twice per year. And there was a feedback from the human element was given a voice to this. I'd like to say some things about the Kennedys. The Kennedys were no choir boys, obviously. Pre-equals emptying them was the warning of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Another disclosure aspect coming out now, they have a television commercial that aliens were defeated and called Space Defense, which actually seems like a serious advertisement on the military site, which I think Randy shared it with me. And there is various groups here, I am agreeing with Cobra completely that there's all different elements that are trying to spin these things, so it's very confusing with information, partial information, and of course this revelation that is going to come out for the people who are basically asleep, that there have been lots of lies presented to them, and I don't think that the cabal can be able to do this. Randy thinks that it has to come slowly, but in our conversations he has mentioned that a lot of people cannot handle the truth, but they better get ready really soon because the evidence is coming fast. We have lots of solar activity and Earth-based reaction activity that is going to cause an increase naturally in earthquakes. We are not looking at extinction events, but I see some changes coming. So, people have to prepare themselves, and that's what we hope this interview will do, in my opinion. Louisa: right, so why did they keep Roswell classified? Aside from the fact there's the obvious self-serving role of keeping all the technology to themselves in exchange for the alien technology. Making the agreement that President Eisenhower made to have certain abductions or certain cattle taken in exchange for technology, what was it for? Fiber optics, transistors, things of that nature, looking glass technology. All this came from the Roswell crash. If I am not mistaken, and if I have any facts wrong, guys, please feel free to correct me, but I do try to get my facts right. What is it about humanity that we can't handle? What is it that we can't handle? Cobra? Cobra, I would not agree that we cannot handle this, and this myth that we cannot handle this is actually disinformation tactic that is being spread by the cabal so people would be afraid of disclosure. Actually, people, I would say especially in undeveloped countries, have much greater shocks every day that disclosure would bring. People in war zones are fighting for their own survival, and disclosure process would be peanuts for them. It would be very easy. Human beings can adapt to quite extreme situations, and receiving intel about disclosure, I would say, would be a medium degree of shock which somebody can absorb in about a week or two. And the positive consequence of disclosure would be much greater than the initial shock. Because the light forces are pushing for full disclosure as soon as possible, and the cabal is trying to delay and hold back the process as much as possible. There are certain interest groups that wanted to delay the process for 100 years, but which is absolutely unacceptable and is not going to happen. Louisa, I have to bring the ambassador in because the ambassador is a scholar in religious texts and knowing how people are in their belief systems. Ambassador, what do you think that people need to do? Road ambassador: no, you see, if you look at, for example, the Islamic belief system believes that God is always creating. He doesn't stop creating things on heavens and earth, so it's no contradictions that aliens could exist if you study Islamic scriptures, but I think that it would be more traumatic for many fundamentalist Christians and other faiths, especially faiths that are putting a lot of effort into that Jesus is going to return and save us, and with this disclosure that is going to come from the Vatican very soon, it's going to be even more traumatizing, that I think, for both Muslims and Christians than the disclosure of aliens. I think everyone with a little bit of common sense knows that exists something else out there, and that we are not alone in this universe, but there are other truths that is going to be released, other disclosures that are going to be released that's going to be traumatizing people and their belief systems far more than alien disclosure. Louisa, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Road ambassador: for example, we know that Jesus did not die on the cross and survived the crucifixion and died a natural death. That doesn't change his words, that doesn't change his mission. You know, he can come back whatever he wants if God wants it. But for people that believe that Jesus died and woke up after 3 days, he physically went to heaven, and that's the only thing that's going to save your life, that your belief system is the only way to save you, then you find out that the guys in the Vatican has his body, that will be more traumatizing. Rob, I would like to comment on the original question. The reason the secrecy is there is because it's been engineered. The Zeta Reticulian group that was run by the reptilians secretly behind the scene in another group called the Syndicate of the Omegans have done this on many worlds, and they remain on the scene for hundreds of years, manipulating humanity, creating different systems, as Cobra talked about the Archon invasion. So, Secrecy has been a plan all along, and the reason they won't release it is because it puts them in a lesser position. They're breakaway civilizations. I'm going to disagree with the ambassador. Christ was murdered on the cross, and however it was done, resurrection is a possibility. Randy has been resurrected so that technology is available. I believe he was part of the architectural mental universe that creates the physical plane, one of the highest incarnations in that he was overshadowed by a cosmic being. Ambassador, you see Potter, this is exactly what I talk about. You couldn't deal with this story that I told you, so you had to go into your tantra on this topic. The problem is this: whatever you think is the truth doesn't need to be what it is, and so basically the whole concept is to break down your belief system, and that is what will happen. Rob, okay, you show me the Vatican's body, that you claim that you know about, and I don't believe that. Ambassador, Potter, I have myself personally, when researching, went to the place and studied the things for many years. I am not talking about speculation here. I have a very good friend who I consider as a brother, who also died and came back from death, and in this incident he met Jesus, and that changed his life, and now he is a Christian and he used to be a Buddhist. So as I said, it doesn't change the message, it doesn't change the state of Jesus. But, this so-called truth that they are sitting on, at the Vatican, which they will be releasing at some point in time very soon, will break down the belief system for the majority of Christians and Muslims, and even people like yourself feel traumatized of even hearing this because it doesn't fit your belief system. And that is what the problem is. Rob, my feeling very strongly is that I don't buy the religion aspect and the twisting of the Christians and the Catholics, but the life of Christ stands, brother. That's my opinion, and you have your opinion, and what you say doesn't make it the truth either. Louisa, okay, guys, let's remain respectful. This is what is going to happen in society. This is a microcosm. This is why we are trying to come together today, to find a way to respectfully disagree. It is going to challenge people's belief systems. Rob, right, and throwing out the message that the office of the Christ on the planet is not going to serve the purpose. We are not here to break down belief systems, we are here to reveal the truth, and neither I, nor Cobra, nor Andy, nor you, nor the ambassador, are qualified to reveal the true nature of truth. Ambassador, you see, Potter, the problem that you have is that you don't understand what we are trying to say. It's that the fact here is that we are talking about disclosure, and we are talking about the effect on human beings. And you can handle this form of disclosure. It doesn't matter if you believe in fairy tales or you believe in this or I believe in that religion. It doesn't matter. We are talking here about disclosure and how disclosure will affect people. You have people who are atheists who doesn't care about anything about Christ or Muhammad or Buddha or whatever. But at the same time, when that type of disclosure will come out, which will cause a huge negative effect on human beings. And that is why I am bringing these things up, because people need to be ready for everything. I do not care what your personal relationship with Jesus is, that is between you and your spirit, but when we talk about disclosure, and you want to talk about real disclosure, or you want to talk about another form of disclosure, this type of disclosure will cause the greatest terror on the belief system of these people who believes in that concept. Louisa, that is why from a psychological perspective I wanted to bring you all together, because people are going to need help. Our belief system are the bricks that we build our life out of, and what we build our reality out of hold our world together. This is the matrix. And if they are going to brick by brick take the matrix apart, and we are going to see a completely different reality, and it's very hard for the human mind, and Randy and Cobra both know this also, how difficult this is going to be for some people, because it's going to fracture, literally fracture their perspective of reality, as they know it. Steve, quite right, and so what we are trying to do today is figure out how can we help them. Let me go to Randy. Because Randy, you've done so much on yourself and on your healing and what you've had to do psychologically and emotionally from all of your experiences, and then I am going to go to Cobra to get Cobra's opinion too, about what do you think we need to be doing? Randy, well, It turns out that about none of my personal experience on that matters as it turns out, but it does turn out that we, United States Marine Corps Special Section, actually have a ton of demographic data on this. And because my Brigadier General and a number of members of the command staff are in daily meetings at the UN and in DC on a daily basis talking to everybody about how this is happening, not whether or not it is happening, but how it's happening, and I can actually speak quite directly about this. What I can tell you is that we have set up a number of gradients of targeted demographics, all across the spectrum from right to center to left and to every other weird point in between, so that all of this targeted information is going out to these gradients so that each group of people is receiving the psychological information that they are willing to digest this minute. And as that continues, there is more and more truth that is coming with that. It's just happening, but not every gradient in that from left to right is getting all that information at once. They are getting different degrees of information, and they are getting different kinds of information. They are getting information that tells them exactly what they needs to do in order to not panic and freak out and think that everything is okay. So if religious people need to be hearing, and believe me, their propaganda is telling them this, that everything is fine, that Jesus is coming back, it's all being resolved like we think it is, that's fine. You know that's working for them at the moment because it's keeping them from freaking out and killing themselves and their families, which the percentage of people that can happen to is not an if, it's a how many, and that number is a number we want to make as small as possible. And so targeted demographics and gradient approach to this, given those gradient demographic a bit of information at a time, and so that eventually it will all swim together. Now there may be different events in there that are sort of big significant, oh my god this is the event, but you know what, it's not going to affect every gradient, that's just how it's going to go. Some people are going to be really insulated in their world and they are not even going to pay attention to what's going on, they are going to be hearing a whole other reality, and that's what they are going to be hearing until a time later when it's just going to be, oh, where have you been since last Tuesday, Johnny come lately? And then they are going to be like, oh, I don't want to look stupid, so we better go ahead and find a reason to switch our belief system, because this is what people do. They find a reason to switch their belief system because of what we can do is believe this now because of A, B, and C happening. Steve, Randy, in your demographics, was there time scales involved as well in your studies? Randy, absolutely. Steve, what were they? Randy, we are in the middle of an operation, so there is no way that I can give time scales other than to say, we have it timed out, we have the rhythms of these social demographics, stimulus and response time to like the day and the week, so we know, for example, let's say on April 1st we ping this social demographic in this wave, that going to cause a response wave that in 18 days we know we will be able to hit them with another ping that in another 18 days, or depending on what time of year it is, maybe it's the spring it will be faster, or maybe if it's the winter it will be slower, but there is this whole set of rhythm of demographics and how they move, and we're watching all of that. We've got a lot of people who have just been observing that for years, decades even. Steve, how is the response measured, in Facebook, social media, how it is measured? Randy, every kind of demographic polling response that you could think of, so absolutely the data that is gleaned from the social media, Facebook, Twitter, all of that, polling data that comes from all of the media sources and not media sources that's taken from independent intelligence sources that's even more accurate in some cases. Keyword searches. So lots of, we are not looking for people to tell us what they are up to, we are looking for identifying in those conversations what people are thinking and what their trends are, so that has given a huge image of what the entire social psychology of the entire civilization is, because they are all putting it out there electronically. So, we can literally know what people are thinking minute by minute, day by day, and help them move in a direction that going to be okay, I can do with this, and then however many days, weeks, months down the road, when we are all on the same page, when we all converge at the same point, we get there, but we are doing it this way to avoid conflict, to avoid panic, to avoid suicides, to avoid homicides, and to avoid people setting themselves on fire and running down the street. So, it's just happening and we're doing it and it's going to work out pretty well, and I understand that everybody wants full disclosure, but let me make an argument against full disclosure right this second. We've done the demographics that equals more fatalities than stringing this off a spiral and having it come out 18 months later. Lives will be saved. Louisa, okay, that sounds like an interesting plan. I want to ask Cobra, what do we need to do? What's going to be the hardest thing and what do we need to do? Cobra, okay, first there are a few things I need to say here. Number one is that everybody is trying to approach disclosure from the old paradigm. What we need to understand here is that the whole reality will shift. We are not having disclosure in the old duality-based society. The disclosure process is part of a deeper galactic spiritual transformation process, and people who are exposed to full disclosure will not be exposed to the same conditions we have right now because it is part of the galactic change. There is so much talk about fear and how the people will react and the panic. Again, I will reiterate, this is part of the old paradigm. People are able to go through their own psychological process. I would say the vast majority of people are able to go through their own psychological process facing disclosure. Randy, over 85% are totally not going to want to kill themselves. The 15% that will go into possible chaos or psychotic or schizophrenic episodes that we are trying to cushion. Cobra, okay, I will explain. There is a small percentage of people that can have problems, but there will be. The light forces have a plan, and at the time of the event, to give counseling and give guidance to the vast majority of those people. And I will put it this way, every day over 200,000 people die of hunger, every day. After the event nobody will die anymore because of hunger, so we will save 200,000 lives every day, and disclosure is part of this process. Disclosure doesn't mean just seeing strange aliens on TV. Disclosure means remodeling of a human society on the financial aspect of it to the political aspect of it. The whole structure of society will go through a phase transition. The phase transition will have a positive net effect on human society. There will be individuals that will be having problems going through that process, but for the vast majority of those people it will be easier than most current psychological models expect, because the energetic conditions at that moment will be different. People have their emotional bodies and their mental bodies that are now living in a certain environment. At the moment of full disclosure, that energetic environment will be different. There will be much more assistance of the light forces at that point. Without putting too much focus on the fear aspect of this, because we are creating our reality, I would put more focus on how can we solve this, how can we make this disclosure process safe and balanced for the vast majority of people. Louisa, exactly, so thank you for that, Cobra. It seems that we are really looking at a healing process too, aren't we, Cobra? Cobra, yes, exactly. Steve, how would that counseling look? Is there a mentoring thing? Is it a one-to-one thing? It is a general thing. How does it look? Cobra, there are many layers of this. There will be a general layer which will take care of maybe 90% of cases, and there will be more individualized approach for those people who will need a more personal approach. There will be people who are now being trained for this, not openly, and there are people who have been guiding in their lives to learn how to assist people and will be contacted at the moment of the event to give counseling to people who will be in need, but there is something being planned for that occasion. Louisa, so you are saying that there is a mentorship that's really planned here, is that what you are saying, for humanity? Cobra, yes, yes. It's very interesting to see what happened here today, and we all have very different backgrounds, very different experiences, and I just want to remind you thought that I am the only female here, and it's my wish and love for humanity and this planet that I want you guys to tune into, because it's your vibration too, it's your frequency, and let's just find that frequency and stay on that frequency and ride that frequency, because that is what is going to heal us and that's going to bring us through this. The divine female energy on this planet, as Cobra is talking about this energetic shift, as you know, the Schumann frequency is already raising. Gaia is already trying to help us all with this third spiral. Make repairs to our third spiral of our DNA so we can increase our abilities. So is it also something that you are talking about, Cobra? Cobra, yes, exactly, this is exactly what is going to help us. Then pure feminine aspect is an energy field that will emanate from the galactic center and will bring the balance. So this balance is the lacking factor here in the psychological makeup of humanity, and as we come closer to this compression breakthrough moment, the moment of the event, the moment of full disclosure, there will be more and more of that energy present, and it will get easier and easier, and this is why the disclosure process will accelerate. The disclosure process is not guided by any of the factions on the surface of the planet, it is guided by much higher forces with much greater understanding of the situation. Louisa, okay, well, I hear also that the powers that be aren't all on the same page. You guys just had an interview with Corey Good, and there has been reports that Corey has come out with info about there being so much disagreeing and arguing in meeting. And it's really like, if you're that advanced, how, as above so below, you can't really criticize humanity too much when you can't get your own act together and everybody is arguing and fighting. And just the other day on the Soho satellite there was some Anunnaki looking type ship being taken out. There's wars obviously going on above our head, there are all kinds of things going on. But Rob, you talked about this with Corey and Alex Collier, who I also wanted to have come into this group, and I would hope at some point we could all sit down, and I'm going to represent humanity, by the way. But anyway, I wanted us all to sit down, and I wanted Alfred Lambrimiant Weber to be here because we have to have this dialogue. We can't stay behind the curtain, we can't stay in the shadow. We have to come out and have this dialogue because we have a need to understand and a right to know first of all. Rob, alright, well, everyone has their own opinion here, so there's lots of different things. I'm going to respectfully say I strongly disagree with the ambassador's opinion on that one thing. We'll let that go, we don't have to go into that, but I strongly disagree on that part. Now I will say that we are going to have part of this takeover of our childish games. Stop. It's a timeout period for Earth. It's going to be interposed is basically a divine enforcement, as Cobra says, a galactic codex, a law that requires an aggressive groups are the ones that are not agreeing. The positive groups are all on the same page more or less, to allow us to reconcile our various DNA influences and to bring us into healing, and there's a process for that, and it's been done on other worlds, on the Vagan system. And many other worlds have gone through this process of healing, the what we call the Luciferian and the rebellion, and so that type of thing has all happened before. So there's going to be not only a media, but there's also an energetic principle, and Cobra can speak to this. I'm not sure about Randy, but when the light forces come in with their ships, they can actually invisibly penetrate a building. You can be sitting inside a spaceship in a higher plane, and the vibration of love and healing is so all-encompassing that all differences disappear, as Alex Collier describes it. So that type of energy at the time of the event, and I am not exactly sure, Cobra is probably more up on the technological aspect of this, when the cleansing of the, Corey says, the parasites and the frequencies that pushes things out, and the Earth is cleared of the plasma anomaly accretion vortex consciousness AI. When that is cleansed, there is no general human understanding of that vibrational change, so I have to agree with Cobra. I think people can handle the truth. I think that the loss of crazy people versus saving people from wars, destruction and death, in my opinion. Randy's group obviously is extremely well intended in their military mind and dealing with it from their perspective, and I think all of these are going to be unified in the quantum level, and from a holographic level everything will take place. And Corey is not very clear on what's going on, and that's one of the things that I like to bring to all of the things, is the spiritual consciousness aspect of the soul, and a lot of this is all on the lower material level. And so we have to connect with our divine presence individually, and however people do that is in their own relationship with life, and that process will become much easier when the parasitic hostile lower personality physical body attack agenda is removed. So I think people can handle the truth, and I don't think that there is as much disagreement as is played out with Corey, and that's been one of my issues with him, is to articulate the benevolence as opposed to the hostiles. Louisa: okay, thanks Rob, and again, like you did in part 1 and Rob's joining us again in part 2, you have brought out where we ultimately left off in part 1 of this round table is the subject of love. Because there is really no way we are going to move forward without this unconditional love that surrounds us, because at some point the discord, the differences, the conflict has to disappear. We have to either make a choice, and Cobra is saying that vibrationally this is going to begin to just happen. And everybody here has been doing things to try to make this process to bring about a good change. And so the ambassador has his global mission of peace and the global mission of peace TV right now, and you are featuring on there the humanitarian projects, the things you are trying to do to make better changes. Do you want to explain that a little? And then I want to ask Cobra about Operation Dreamland and what that's about, and then I am going to go over to Randy for another question. So Ambassador, would you like to explain that? Because I think that ultimately we have to embrace people with love, and it's about helping each other and doing things differently. Ambassador, I believe that the problem that we are facing on this planet is that we are living in Disneyland and we do not have a normal media that we can trust. They are playing games with us and lying to us, and sometime they tell the truth and sometime they don't. And then we have alternative media, which is sometimes 7 worse. And people are talking about disclosure, they are talking about events, they are talking about President Obama being arrested, and the next day he is with the Swedish Prime Minister, and the next second he is supposed to be executed, and then now he is fine. You know, all these different stories, lies and deception and games being played by different intelligence services on the planet and their stooges that is pushing a form of disclosure, and this is what we are trying to explain here, is that when you attack people's belief systems or what they hold closest, they become traumatized, they become aggressive, they become emotional, like what's happened here without friend, like when I tried to explain for him what is the plan and what you will see in the future, and this is what will come. And how that will affect people, that's sad, and maybe it will be good for some people too, but at the same time it's going to cause a lot of problems. Now with the global mission of Peace TV, basically the focus is to bring people together and to see the people together doing the projects we are doing right now and in different locations. We were sponsoring different events in these last seminars in Europe here, and we are building up the platforms for the special meetings that is taking place. So right now there are a lot of things that is happening, but to engage people with knowledge and engage people that has something to contribute to humanity and then push that forward into different arenas, I think that is very important. I believe we need to focus on what's real and needy for the person in everyday life right now. We are coming into a time with so much fear and hate, and there is so much negative energy in the United States and in Europe, and we are just feeding this and it's getting worse. And then we are sitting and worrying about other situations. I think it is very important that we come together as humanity, and yes, we have different belief system, we have different understandings of realities and truths based on our own journeys, and some people have done their journey and some people have done another journey, but it doesn't mean that just because you don't know or doesn't understand doesn't mean he may not be right. For example, I hear some stories that I hear people telling about the alien agenda, and I can't grasp it because this is not a part of my knowledge, but we have to listen to what people have to say and see how that knowledge can help humanity in any shape or form. And I think that's very, very important, that's where we need to keep out focus. And as I have said, that when we cannot even understand our neighbors, or when we cannot even agree with each other, even to disagree, then basically we have an issue. And now we are talking on a level which is far above the head of many, and most people are going to listen to it and they are going to think that those people are insane, and some other people with another consciousness will be very excited and will feel that this is a very interesting discussion that we are having that will benefit them in some shape or form. But I think still, with all the knowledge that we have here on the panel, I think we should try to keep focus on how we should be able to help humanity right now, and I think that is the most important thing. Louisa: well, you are right, Ambassador. Thank you so much. Because that is what the point is for us meeting today. And I just want you all to know that I know each of you personally. I don't know Cobra well yet, but I will, And I just want you to know that I love each and every one of you unconditionally, and that's how I am, and that's the frequency I resonate, and I am trying to project this to you because the feminine energy has to heal the masculine on this planet. The masculine energy is wounded. Has the masculine energy victimized this planet? Yes, but it has to be healed. And men, especially our warriors, have to know that they are worthy of love. They are worthy of healing regardless of what their acts were, because it was imposed on them. Going to war, battling, doing acts that were unkind and unloving was imposed on them, and that doesn't mean that they are not worthy of being loved and can be healed and can embrace the feminine energy that is coming into this planet. Because it's the women at this point, in my opinion, that are going to heal the men on this planet and heal the masculine as well, because women have to learn how to love unconditionally. They have to learn how to love in a way that empowers a man, not disempowers a man. And also men have to learn to love the feminine and to embrace their feminine energy and not feel that they have compromised their masculinity in the process. So, the feminine energy, I think, is going to heal these wounds, and we have to come together today in this vibration because they are watching us above, and if we can do this and put our differences aside, and heal each other and be in unconditional love in the moment right now and forget about our differences, then we can do this. And we can show them that we can do this, and maybe we can do it better than they can, because for those of us who are human, we can do this. We love, and we love intensely. We don't only love other humans, but we love animals, we love other species. We can love reptilians, we can love zetas, we can love mantids, we can love Anunnaki, we can love Pleiadians. Humans have no limitations. There's no boundaries, there's no borders. It's oneness, it's true oneness. If we could just find that here, we can bring it here and anchor it here. So, Steve, you had a question for one of the guests? Steve, 47 hours 19 minutes, from the human perspective, I'd like to throw question to Cobra, Randy and Rob, from your perspective, which races are working for or against us? Everybody has got their own agenda, and maybe you are in disagreement with each other about certain races, but could you give the listeners a brief 3 or 4 race breakdown of who's for and against us? Maybe start with Cobra. Cobra, okay, Pleiadians, Syrians, positive Andromedans and Arcturians are working for the light, and they don't have a so-called bad agenda behind their back. They are just wanting us to heal and experience the same love and paradise-like existence they are experiencing. And then we have on the negative side the Dracos, and we have the Reptilians, the two main races which went a little bit off the track. Louisa, what about Solipsi Rai? Do we know about a Solipsi Rai? Cobra? Cobra, I don't know about this. Randy, spell it out for me. Louisa, I don't know how to spell it, but they are called Solipsi Rai. There is another group that just moved into town helping President Putin right now. Steve, would you be in agreement with what Cobra said, Randy? Randy, yeah, that is a fair list of goods and bads, and I would add to the bad list that at the moment we are still trying to rouse out the Aldebarans. We are also trying to roust out the plasmid freelancers, who are essentially made of, they look like they are made of neon, they are essentially sort of made up of different colored plasmas. It's pretty tricky looking, but they are kind of pretty but also scary if you have never seen one at first, and they are not nice. They operate mostly as independent contractors, they are bagmen and hitmen, they are unsavory characters for the most part, and so we don't care for them. And we have been routing them out for a while, so I just wanted to add the Aldebarans and the plasmid contractors to that list. Steve, Rob? Rob, yeah, I would agree generally with Cobra. There are many genetic racial phenotypes, some stemming from what we would call, some are from our animal kingdom that we would look at, like Hales Collier talks about the lion people, and there are many different ones. Louis Martins, the guy I am working with from Bolivia, is working with a group from Alpha Centauri, and they call themselves the Fu. They are extremely strong, muscular, they range from 9 to 12 feet tall. Harold Wilcox worked with a group from the Barnard star system who were quite tall as well, so The different groups, I think all of them have a certain type of agenda, even if 'tis to try and heal us, but I think generally speaking, for us postulating on these things that happen out there, we don't really have clarity. There's a lot of things that need to come to the table as in an open, transparent communication, without the controlled media, as the ambassador said so. A lot of these positions will be revealed to us at the time of the event when everyone is calm with this new energy. There is talk. Alex Collier says that the bad guys are not as weak as they say they are, and also there seems to be more evidence that they have very high technology. There were some meteors on the Earth at the Bermuda Triangle that the Chinese were trying to keep off of the planet for some time, so maybe they could hold off this dwarf star if it's real. We don't know yet, it's still a postulation, and NASA made an announcement. Maybe the cabal is running into their things because they are looking for some sort of large, possibly meteor event. There's so many things going on, and I think that we just have to remain calm and open to what's coming forth. Let the future and the truth be revealed as it comes. On a level at this point in time there is too much disinformation, but generally speaking, my intelligence from the persons that I have spoken to and from my experience from the benevolent, it's that it's 99.0% benevolence in the universe, and that we are kind of a focal point for something going on here that's a little different, and there is a material level world and a superluminal beings that aren't really involved. They don't have the negative duality that we have. Louisa, so, who's parked outside of CERN right now with the long cigar-shaped ships? And quite honestly, from some satellite images that were published online, it looks like the town is pretty much dead. I don't know if you guys can confirm this, but it looks like there is a morgue on top of the parking deck. It looks like the town is dead, and in these satellite images, the car don't move for months. So, whatever is going on, whatever CERN is tied into is extremely bad for us, and nobody has really talked about that yet. Although it wasn't really part of the discussion, but these things have to stop. I mean, I don't know what is taking the council so long, because there are still people in dolls whose souls are still sitting in boxes on shelves from what I understand, and I could be wrong, but if this is true, this is unreasonable and unacceptable, that humanity has to be free. We can't keep humanity enslaved, manipulated, controlled, drugged, poisoned. Enough is enough. And we really need to start kicking butt. We really need to get serious, and mankind doesn't have access to the technology to overcome the technology used against us, although some people, major manifestors I know of, would argue that it's not the case, that we don't really need to have those plasma technologies, that we don't need to have all those sophisticated weaponry, and it seems like what Cobra is saying is that through your weekly mediation to raise the frequency and try to bring the event quicker. But you also have something called Operation Dreamland. Do you want to explain what that is, Cobra? Cobra, Operation Dreamland is operation of the light forces that would like to anchor on the physical plane the new society, the new reality, and it's targeting the light warriors and the light workers and try to assist them in their missions as much as possible to prepare them for the event and for the time after the event. Because most of the light workers and light warriors were incarnated many lifetimes ago, thousands of years ago, just for this time, to assist in this breakthrough, to assist in this transformation. And Operation Dreamland is here to assist those who are making the breakthrough on the surface of the planet. Louisa, okay, so in what ways? I know you have creative arts in there, could you be a little more specific? And I am going to include at the bottom of this transcript links for everybody, and if they are interested in participating, I'm going to have links to Randy's site, Rob's site, Cobra's site, and the Ambassador's Global Mission of Peace. I know, Rob, you have a conference coming up, and I am going to ask you about that in a minute. We are going to put links to everything everybody is involved in here, because I do want to promote your work as much as possible. As much as Facebook will let us, because it seems the more interesting information I post on our Facebook page, the more Facebook censors the posts. That's a little bit of a problem, but we try to work around that stuff. But is it just through creative arts, or can you be a little more specific about how you are doing that, Cobra? Cobra, we have weekly meditations, From time to time we have global planetary activations that we do to assist in the activations of the planetary light grid. We have conferences around the world, we are developing new technologies, and we are having groups, some of them are public and some of them are not, for various projects. So there is a lot happening, a lot is going on, and if you go to my blog you can later include the link. You will have different links to many different sites and many different projects we are involved with. Louisa: okay, so what about the music? I know Randy and I have had a chat about this, and Steve is a singer, I am a composer and musician as well. And Steve and I know pretty much, we understand music and its healing effects and its communication effects, in a way that musicians do, but Randy and I have had a conversation about this, about the frequency and about the healing. And Randy, did you want to make a comment on this? Because you are out in the public, you are giving your story, you are teaching Genix, you have workshops about Genix because you have listened to my music. Actually, a few of you on this panel have, although I am not talking about my music specifically. Did you want to comment on that, Randy? Because I know we have talked about that. Randy: what was the question? Louisa: the question had to do with the Genix, the frequencies, meditation, increasing our abilities and music in one way, but I think there is a relationship between them. What is the relationship between these things? Randy: yes, physics. So I will be clear, back in the mid-1960s, when a lot of the smaller programs in the covert military space program were laying down their bets on what they thought their long-term investments should be, so people were looking at the technology, asking, do we really want to spend the next 30 years making sure we've got the best, most powerful spaceships that we rule the skies, or do we want to spend the next 30 years developing the most advanced computer technology so we rule information, or do we want to spend the next 30-40 years on super soldier technologies that we rule and murder machine assassins, or do we want to focus on genetic development? And we decided that we were going to put our bets down on long-term investment of genetic development, and so more than any other commander system we have used Genix at the very core of what we do and operate as the only fully functional genetic command within the covert military space program, meaning that every single member of the United States Marine Corps Special Section is genetically trained, genetically conditioned, genetically enhanced, given implants, and then connected up to a genetic computer which essentially routes everyone together so it gives a simulated hive mind, so we all actually get to participate as a military intelligence pseudo-collective way. And that is one of the reasons we are very, very effective at what we do, is because we absolutely operate as the only fully genetic command in the covert military space program. Being that's the case, we fully understand that mental evolution and genetic development are absolutely critical important, but we also understand that the only way that really develops is in a society that is stable. So as we continue to shore up the infrastructure and clean up the trash and stabilize society so that genetic development can happen in a stable, peaceful atmosphere, we absolutely think that it's a critical thing to happen. We don't think that it is wise or safe to just have a genetic awakening in an unstable atmosphere in which the water doesn't run and the toilets don't flush and the streets aren't safe. So we think it's absolutely critical to work on our infrastructure while we prepare and tech people's genetic development, because we don't think that one with the other is smart. We think that you have to have them both to be smart. Steve: Randy, everything in the universe is a double-edged sword, as you know. What are the positive and dangers of this technology in your opinion? Randy: the positive aspects of it, I think I pointed out that when people reach a certain level of genetic development, that all of a sudden you enter into a world where nobody can ever lie again, because everyone can tell when people are lying and telling the truth. So that if you don't think that a world where people can't lie doesn't change everything, like fundamentally the world we live in is totally different, think about that a little bit further. If people can know what people are thinking, know what people are feeling. I am not saying people having the ability to read people's private thoughts out of their minds, but no, you are BSing me, or oh, I hurt your feelings because I can feel that I hurt your feelings. Or I can hear in your head that I hurt your feelings, that creates a level of understanding and truthfulness between communication and affairs that could just change everything. So we think those are the fundamental changes that are the most important in that kind of development. And the danger aspects really just come into people who become very strong and very powerful and don't behave responsibly. And then those people just have to be regulated by other people who are strong and powerful and say no and tell them not to do that. Steve, so it could be used for mind control basically? Randy, the more genetically developed you become, the harder it is to have your mind controlled. So that's the other aspect of that, is that we are much more controllable society right now because we are not genetically developed. If we got everyone up to sort of kindergarten, first grade genetic level, then we wouldn't really be able to be mind controlled because everyone would just say, hey, you are just trying to mind control me. It would just be obvious that people aware trying to do it because you would be aware of it. It would be one of the first sensory awarenesses that you would have. Rob, I'd like to make a comment on that if I may? Louisa, yes, Rob, go ahead. Rob, I feel that one of the problems that's happened here is in the past has been a contention in the historical relationship between the extraterrestrial races and Earth has been the desire for Earth people technology without spiritual moral understanding of universal laws and principles, and I think that, no disrespect to Randy, but the secret space program and the development of this under military guises and under the guidance of some of the more hostile groups that wanted to utilize our bellicose nature and our ability for technology has been one of the problems that we face here, and I think Cobra would possibly agree with me on this, that there will be what we call mystery schools based on spiritual moral principles of universal laws of intelligence, that will develop these naturally and not artificially push people with this technology. A lot of this technology, if you understand Cobra, is used to inculcate fear, ionic plasma scalar field, radionics, scalar wave, actually infrasound technology that can disrupt, but it can also be used to heal, and these will be brought forward in the future. Cobra, can you talk about the positive evolution of spiritual consciousness and what we would call the city type of technologies and how that can be developed responsibly? Cobra, yes, of course. Spiritual development is a natural inner force that is actually present in every sentient being everywhere in the universe, including planet Earth, and this impulse, this drive for spiritual development has been artificially suppressed by scalar technologies by the negative military. I know that there are positive military programs to develop spiritual psychic powers, and from that perspective, and they are doing some good progress, and this will be included in the overall plan for the event, but there is a larger picture. Every being on the planet has and will have that inner drive for evolution, and this will be accelerated, and the stability of human society will be maintained, because if we have more awareness on the planet, it is easier to maintain stability. The only reason human society is so unstable is because there is such a great force used to suppress human spiritual development, and so much energy is put into that suppression, and this creates psychological instability in human beings. And when this pressure is removed, human nature naturally seeks stability and finds that equilibrium in harmony with natural laws of the universe. Louisa, okay, thank you, Cobra. We are getting down to our last segment of our interview. We covered a lot of ground today, and we are getting down to our last 20 minutes, and I think what's happened is, like I said, an example of what conversations are going to happen when disclosure happens, and the other parts of disclosure, of hidden truths, history and technology, etc., because I talked to people near New York City, and I could just imagine walking down Columbus Avenue with UFOs overhead, and the people would be like, oh, look at that, and we just go about our business. You know, New Yorkers are like that. Oh, how do you like that? You know, it's not a big deal for New Yorkers, to be honest with you, they take it in stride. But it's not going to be that way in the Bible Belt of the country and other parts of the country. But I want to thank Rob for bringing that up. I want to thank Randy for bringing that up. We are all talking. I think what the ambassador is saying is that we need to rise to a new level of awareness. That's ultimately where we are going to go, and how we are going to help ourselves, though this, rising to a higher level of awareness, consciousness, a higher vibration, a higher frequency, and we can go about doing it in different ways, and that's what we are bringing to this round table today, is the fact that we have different ways that we are going to go about doing this. As diverse as humanity is, there is not just one solution for everybody. What I see happening here today is that there are various ways to go about achieving this, but that the ultimate goal is the same regardless of how we get there. The ultimate goal is the same: to raise awareness, to raise frequency, to raise consciousness ultimately, and I love how this is really what everybody has been saying today. We have been saying it in different ways. Steve, did you have a question for our guests? Steve: yes, the scalar technologies that Cobra mentioned for you. Cobra, I have noticed, as I know Louisa has, that they are building new antennas around major cities around the world, and these appear to be a different technology. Can you comment on that? Cobra: actually there are various versions of the scalar technology, and there are layers upon layers of this technology, but the purpose of that technology is the same: to create scalar standing waves in the plasma to suppress human consciousness, and it's more and more difficult for them to do that because there is this, as I said before, natural evolution taking place, and there is more and more power needed to have the same effect, and this is why there are more and more harmful plasma scalar fields of radiation around the planet, and this is why people have those strange symptoms right now, because the plasma field is polluted by those scalar fields, and at a certain point there will be a breaking point where those plasma fields will begin to disintegrate, and this will be close to the moment of the breakthrough. Steve, how can we accelerate that? Cobra: you can accelerate it by connecting with your own higher self, invoking divine feminine and divine masculine aspects by connecting with force which is dimensionally greater than the plasma field that they are trying to create. Louisa: so what you are saying is that the Schumann frequency of the planet is raising, and so the powers that be understand this, and if I understand this correctly, and anybody can comment on this who wants to, that to compensate for that and keep us in a lower frequency, they are employing these scalar weapons to lower our vibration. And I say this because I personally know of some special indigo and crystal children who talk to fairies, and they tell them what is going on all the time, and I get confirmation of this, and it's amazing. But they are in fact using these towers to lower these frequencies. So Gaia is trying to give us these codes to heal our third spiral of our DNA so we can raise our abilities and frequencies, and yet this plasma technology, this scalar technology, is trying to suppress that. Is that what I understand, Cobra or Randy or whoever wants to comment? Cobra, if you want to go first. Cobra: yes, of course. This is exactly what is happening. The plasma scalar field tries to suppress that natural process of evolution, the planetary breakthrough. I would like to comment here that Schumann frequency is not increasing. There are actually many multiple harmonic Schumann frequencies that describe what is going on in Earth ionosphere, and what is actually happening is not a change of that frequency. What is happening is a change of a higher dimensional vibrational frequency of the planet and the plasma scalar field that they are trying to create. The cabal or the dark forces are trying to keep humanity suppressed as long as possible, and they know it's going to end. They are just trying to delay this as long as possible with as much power as possible, and it's getting increasingly difficult for them. Rob, I would like to say that eventually at some point they can be dismantled. I know people that go and place scalar devices at some of these towers, and they do actually work suppressing the negative ones, and they had them removed, then they bury them in the ground, they sit by and watch, and then there is some sort of secret government agency that comes up and tried to figure out where the source is, and eventually they find it, and dig it up and remove it. So there are counter technologies, a lot of tachyon type technologies, and there is pendants, and there are various things that can help stabilize the body's field. Can't completely negate the frequencies, but can have the strength in the body's center to ignore or to maintain its harmonics, and that's a junior version of the light healing technology that will come forward. That will be extremely powerful stuff that Randy is probably more familiar with will take place, but it's all run on electricity, and if the electricity stops for a little bit then all that comes down, so Ty will reveal the truth on that one. 1:12 and 15 seconds. Louisa, well Randy, you would probably know about this too, that when a person's frequency, their own individual frequency, starts to increase to a certain level, they begin getting headaches, and I think what's happening is this technology triggers at a certain frequency and then it starts to give people shoes frequencies are rising. So Steve, this is why you're having trouble when you are singing and you are projecting those beautiful frequencies that you so beautifully project, and it possible Steve has experienced something like this. But Randy, what's going on? What technology are they using that when someone's frequency raised to a certain point and then they start to get a headache, what's happening? Randy, well, in some cases that's actually part of the process. Your neuropathways are literally rearranging, your brain is making new neurons and building new neural pathways to be able to sustain higher levels of brain function, because you can't sustain higher levels of consciousness without higher levels of brain function, so there is a literal neurobiological process and change that has to occur, and that can cause headaches, and you also become more sensitive to the electromagnetic fields around you. I can remember when I could start to hear the buzz in the plugs in the walls because the wiring essentially makes a high-pitched sound that you can't usually hear. Dogs can sometimes hear it, and as your brain starts to evolve at some point you might tune into something like that, and I would literally follow the sound and end up by the wall with my ear next to a plug and thought, oh my god, that's the wiring buzz of this tiny sound, and I wondered how could I hear that. And it's a number of different things like that you just end up with this hypersensitivity, and your senses are perceiving different things because you are super more electromagnetically sensitive, and your neurobiology is shifting and changing. Some of it is just you and some of it is becoming more sensitive to the stuff that is around you, so it's kind of like waking up and realizing you are in a pool of garbage and you didn't realize you were there because you were deaf and blind the day before, and you couldn't smell apparently either. So some of that is also that there is stuff around me that I don't like, and you are starting to be able to sense that there are these negative things around you. Some of it is not on purpose, so just radio frequency, television frequency waves, we are just clogged with what would call electromagnetic frequency pollution because